Hey everyone, it's Brian, and while my time in Sri Lanka is over, this video is going to cover the 5 best things and the 5 worst things about Sri Lanka. You gotta take the good and the bad together. So, let's begin. Okay, number 1 of the good things, public transportation. The public transportation is amazing. You can get from big cities to small cities with buses and trains. There's their version of Uber, which is called Pick Me, which is great. Now remember, with the public buses, you've got 2 types. You got the red buses and the blue buses. The red buses, well, those are actually owned by the government, and the blue buses, those are private. But you can get on either one, but the red buses will cost you about half as much. Number 2. Number 2 is price. Yes, Sri Lanka has great prices for everything. Due to the exchange rate, your US dollar and euro will go really far. In fact, the US dollar, for $1 you get 326 Sri Lankan rupee, which doesn't really mean much until you realize that a hotel room might cost you $10, $15. I mean, you can go up to, I think the most expensive one I saw was like $150, and that was in Colombo. You can find more expensive, I suppose, but I didn't stay there, and you don't need to. So yeah, it was good. In fact, in an entire month in Sri Lanka, or technically 4 weeks, 28 days, I spent 1,000 US dollars in the country, including food, transportation, lodging, park entry fee, scuba diving, everything. $1,000 for 4 weeks, so 250 bucks a week. That's not too bad. All right, number 3 are the people. You can't forget about the Sri Lankan people. They are amazing, super friendly, just they're always smiling, and it's hard to feel down. Let's say you're having a bad day and these people are smiling. You can't be sad when they're happy. Come on, you gotta cheer up. Gotta love the Sri Lankan people. Okay, number 4 is the food. Yeah, oh, amazing, delicious, flavorful, and if you're a vegetarian, it is vegetarian friendly. In fact, like I said before in my previous video, I'm not even a vegetarian. I like meat, but if I was gonna be a vegetarian, I would move to Sri Lanka because they put so much flavor and just really draw that flavor out of the food and just take it to a whole nother level. So yeah, food definitely good in Sri Lanka. And the 5th best thing about Sri Lanka is the weather. Now, I was there during part of November and December, so I can only speak for the weather then. But yeah, even though it was a little warmer, where I'm from, yeah, there's lots of snow in November and December. So I couldn't complain. Yeah, it was a little warm sometimes. What do? You wear shorts and a t-shirt. You go swimming in the ocean. The weather is amazing. It's a great winter destination for those of us who live in the northern hemisphere. All right, now we gotta talk about the bad. And the first bad thing that I will have to admit is pollution. I have seen so much trash, sometimes on the side of the road, sometimes in the ocean, on the beach. It's a cultural mindset. In fact, the pollution in Sri Lanka reminds me of sort of what the United States was back in the 70s, where people would just take trash and just throw it away. In fact, one time when I was in Ella, I got some ice cream and I had a napkin serviette, and I'd wipe my mouth, and I was looking for a trash can to throw it in. I couldn't find a trash can, but I saw this police shack, maybe security, and I asked them, "Oh, do you have a trash can inside your shack?" And then, I was like, I just have a little piece of trash. And the guy said, "Oh, yeah, just give it to me." So I figured he was going to put it in the trash can. No, he just took it and threw it down into a ravine. It's a cultural shift that will need to be made in order to eliminate or at least greatly reduce the amount of pollution and trash that you see in the country. All right, bad thing number 2, all right, cleanliness. Now, I'm not talking about the people. I'm just talking about the restaurants. There's a different level of hygiene. And I know this may be a sensitive subject, but maybe there's a halo effect because I was in a restaurant and there were cockroaches everywhere and nobody seemed to mind. It was just acceptable. I mean, there were cockroaches on the wall, on the floor, on the ceiling, and this was in the eating area. That's not even in the back room, the storage area. So I'm surprised I didn't get sick, but a lot of people do get traveler's diarrhea, and there's a reason for it. So that is one of the bad things about Sri Lanka, is sometimes their health standards and food inspections either don't exist or aren't to the same level that we may be used to if we're from other parts of the world. Okay, so you may notice that it's now dark. That's because while I was making this video, I realized that I totally skipped over number 3. And number 3 is infrastructure. The infrastructure in the medium and smaller towns is just not up to the standards, the higher standards that you'll find in bigger cities like Colombo, where the streets are smooth. You don't have like massive drop-offs in the sidewalks. You've got street lights. In the smaller towns, I don't think there are permits required to build anything. You want to build something, you do it. You just put it together. No actual formal training may be required, and that could lead to building collapses, gaps, and just it may not be what you're used to back in your home country. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're going to visit some of the smaller areas, which to me are the best places to visit. All right, number 4, scammers. Yeah, wherever there's tourists, there's going to be people who are going to try to scam you. Now, this is not a reflection on the Sri Lankan people as a whole, but tuk-tuk drivers, they will try to scam you. Unfortunately, they tried it a couple times with me, and I basically didn't fall for it. So yeah, keep that in mind. So the tuk-tuk drivers, you'll have people trying to be a guide for a tourist place where there's a straight path. I mean, like, you can see the item, and they'll still try to charge you a large amount. I had one time in Ella where local farmer walked like 270 meters with me and then want to charge me like 4 days worth of pay for Sri Lanka. No. One time I was walking near the blowhole, probably about a kilometer away, and these local fishermen saw me walking by like, oh, come on, have a seat, and relax, hey, let's talk. Now, they didn't really speak English very well, which is not at all, but we sat there, we tried to converse, and eventually I was like, okay, well, I gotta go, and then they're like, oh, give us money. And the scammers like that really reflect poorly on the good people in Sri Lanka, which is the vast majority, but keep an eye out for the scammers. And number 5 of the bad items is something that luckily I didn't have to actually use, and that's the healthcare system. They do say that Sri Lanka has one of the better healthcare systems in this part of the world, but after walking by some of their facilities and just seeing the state of them, just be aware that it probably doesn't live up to the standards that you may be used to in Europe or the Western Hemisphere. So if you get hurt, keep that in mind. Do you want to get your health care done there, or, especially if it's serious, do you want to just go home and get it done at a place that is more reliable and up to your standards? All right, that was the good and the bad of Sri Lanka. But I had one more item that I wasn't really sure which category to put it into, so it's getting its own category. And it could actually fall into either of them, and this is going to be the driving. When I was driving, or rather as a passenger, in the tuk-tuks, the cars, I wasn't sure if I was going to live. They drive very aggressive, and it doesn't meet our driving standards. It's very, very dangerous, so I would call that bad. However, they also somehow managed to not kill anybody, or at least I never saw a single accident. So maybe they are the best drivers in the world, and I'm just not used to it. So the driving, wow. It's definitely a more aggressive. It looks like there's no control to it whatsoever. There's no order, but I don't know. It seemed to work out in the end. So if you do go to Sri Lanka, make sure you bring an extra pair of underwear because you're probably going to soil them. All right, so there are my top 5 good and bad things about Sri Lanka. You may agree with them, you may disagree. If you've experienced something else or just have any questions or want clarification, go ahead and put it in the comments down below and I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to travel.